Okay, Alison, I think we can probably get started. Thanks so much for speaking today. I'm looking forward to seeing your session on Power BI and Teams. Teams is a bit of a hot topic at the moment, and all the convergence, of all the Power apps, I guess Power Platform apps, and with Teams is it's really exciting to see what's coming up. So looking forward to this. You take it away.
Awesome, thanks, Hamish. So my name is Alison Kennedy. I am a Microsoft certified trainer. I work for ACE Training here in Auckland, and because I'm a trainer, I'm really relaxed and casual in my style. So I see we've got a nice small group. So I want you guys to come off mute, ask questions, tell me how you're using Power BI, what level you guys are at, and if you're using Teams at all with Power BI. So this is my rough agenda for the day, but I think I might just put you guys on the spot. If you want to turn on your cameras, if you've got cameras on, turn those on. And there we go. We've got Hamish. So Hamish, I'll have you go first and tell me if you're using Teams and Power BI at all, or why you've joined this session, other than the fact that you're here working and have to.
I'm running it, right? I have to. No, I'm actually really interested in this. I use Teams a lot, both internally at work, but then also with clients in terms of projects and things. You haven't got a huge amount of experience with Power BI, but I have done the odd team where you put a embedded Power BI report, and I used to manage the Dynamics 365 practice at Fusion 5, and we'd have some embedded reports with kind of people's like the teams kind of KPIs and goals and things, and pulling data from our time scheduling system and that sort of thing, which was really nice to have displayed. So but it was nothing more than just having a Power BI inside of Teams, kind of collaborative working or anything like that. So excited to see because I see you collaborate with other report holders there. So it's kind of excited to see what you got to show today.
Awesome. Thanks, Hamish. Anybody else want to come off mute and introduce themselves? Tell me who I've got here today, or are we all just observing on a Saturday in our pajamas?
I think we might all be in our pajamas.
All right. Well, we've got the chat function as well. Hamish is an excellent host, so Hamish will get you to keep an eye on that. If there's anything that pops up in the conversation, feel free to just interrupt me, and we can address those questions as they come up while I'm on that same train of thought.
Will do. Cool. Thank you. Keep an eye on it.
Thank you. All right. So I've got 4 slides. I'm just going to do lots of demo, and so we'll jump straight into that. So teaching Teams, using Teams is always a good challenge. So what I've got here on my screen is a Microsoft Office E5 trial license that we set up every month at ACE Training to do a lot of our courses and training with. And so what I've done is I've just logged into that using Edge, and that enables me to go to office.com. This is the good old Office 365 home screen that we should all be familiar with. And from here, I'm going to open up Teams inside Microsoft Edge. Now, I'm not going to have the full functionality that you guys have on your actual Teams tenant, but it becomes a little bit Inception-like if I'm trying to use the Teams account that I'm in a Teams meeting of to demonstrate Teams. So we get 95% or more of the functionality from here. So this will get us most of what we need. Because you guys are in a Teams meeting doesn't mean that you can't be using your own Teams environment to kind of follow along. So even though you're in a Teams meeting, you can still navigate around within Microsoft Teams, and you can follow along with me and do some of the things that I'm showing you just to try them out and see how they go. So this first thing that I want to demonstrate is something that works specifically for your Teams environment. This won't impact anyone else within the organization, so we're not getting to that collaborative stage just yet, but it makes your life a little bit easier, and it helps give you access to what you need most frequently. So in Teams, we've got these icons over here on the left-hand side, and this is the default order that Microsoft put them in. This is one of the things that I don't have the functionality in Edge, so I can't demonstrate this, but you guys can try this on yours to verify that I'm not lying to you. You can actually drag and drop those icons, and they'll reorder themselves, and so you can put them in whatever order makes the most sense to you. So I've got Power BI at the top of my list. And what I'm about to show you is how to even get Power BI into this list to begin with. So the 3 dots down here at the bottom are where you can add additional apps. And this is where I want you guys, since you're really quiet and you're not coming off mute, just pop in the chat, what additional apps have you added? Or have you seen people in your organization adding to Microsoft Teams? So today we're talking about Power BI in Teams. So I'm going to search for Power BI, and you'll see that Power BI is one of those apps that we can add to our Teams. And there it goes. It's in italics because I've just temporarily added it. So what we need to do is right-click on that icon and pin, and that will ensure that Power BI always shows up on your list of icons. And like I said, in the real world, I've got my Power BI up closer to the top. I spend quite a lot of time in Power BI. So every time I open Teams, it just goes straight into Power BI and says, "Good morning, Alison. This is what you've got. Here's the latest and greatest information from Power BI." So does anybody, show of hands or thumbs up if you guys have the access to the actions, reactions, anybody using Power BI through Teams in this way? I know there's some pros and cons to it. I've had some people say that they prefer to have Power BI open in another tab so that they can have Teams and they can be seeing 2 things at once. Totally understand that, but yeah, this just gives you a shortcut into basically powerbi.com, so it's the same thing. All right, thanks, Bradley. We'll have to, I'll touch base with you again afterwards, Bradley, and see if you've got any thing that you pick up from the next hour that you think might tempt you into using Teams with Power BI. So I'm going to try and work from Teams, Power BI, rather than working from powerbi.com. So I can close this powerbi.com and I can work solely from Microsoft Teams, and you can see that this is the same as powerbi.com. So I've got access to all of my workspaces. I can go into the one that I just created for today. And so we can see all of the content, all of the same functionality, right? Okay, so the next thing that we want to start to talk about is collaborating in Teams and Power BI and working together with people. And to do that, we need to talk about workspaces. So with Power BI workspaces, there's a lot of different ways to manage these. And again, if you guys want to pop in the chat, you can either just type in the names of some of your workspaces, you can type a couple of sentences about how do you actually manage workspaces. Do you have a workspace for draft content and then a workspace for published stuff? Do you have workspaces for sales versus marketing versus the exec team? Have you not really figured it out yet? Have you just got reports and dashboards everywhere and not sure where to go to find them? So one of the things that I want to address today is making content easier for people to find and using Teams and Power BI together to make that happen. So Hamish, you said you've got per business unit, so you've got all the draft. Are you guys on premium or pro licensing?
Yeah, pro, but I guess like in terms of just each kind of team or business unit has a workspace, but it's not very ordered. It's pretty it's pretty organic in terms of how it's come to be.
yeah, that tends to be how, especially how it starts out, right? And that's what fosters that growth and that collaboration, right? Um, MindMe, yeah, it says we've got non-prod versus prod, um, multiple sandpits, and premium workspace. So that's really fantastic, especially when you can have, when you do have that premium licensing and you have that ability to manage those pipelines and take, you know, your sandbox or sandpit and keep your data sets separate from your published reports. But when we don't have premium, that becomes a little bit trickier and it's a little bit challenging moving content around from your pre-prod to prod workspaces. And we've got lots of draft and in progress content and organic stuff that's kind of floating around in there. It does say data sets are kept separate. So I'm going to create a workspace here, just called, we'll turn those on just because I'm teaching teams. A workspace called data sets. Really generic. You'd probably make it a little bit more specific than that. But what this enables me to do is to store all of my core data sets in this one workspace and then create different reports spanning off of those, rather than having to update the ERP data set for the exec and the sales and all the different business units that need access to that data set. If something changes in it, I update it in the datasets workspace, and that carries through to all of the other workspaces and reports that are using that same data set. So handy. There are some, you know, consequences. It means you have to think a little bit harder when you do make a change to that ERP data set, all the impacts in all the workspaces that that's going to have. Mummy, have you found that that's working, your system's working well? Are you able to come off mute? Awesome.
Yeah, it's a challenge, as you said, that earlier we were having like one report, one data set, one multiple report, multiple data sets. Now we are moving in a phase that we want SMEs to be responsible for the data sets, for the quality of the data set. So it's all about engaging the end user at the different levels. So analysts only work with the data sets and build the reports, and the SMEs or the people who are responsible for the data quality work on the data sets and they maintain the data sets separately. But it's a challenge because when multiple reports come out of single data sets, how are you going to upgrade the data sets? How frequently can you update it? What is the impact and risk analysis? The actual analysis become, quite lengthy when you have to do a production upgrade. So as you have said that you have to think harder. I totally agree with that.
Yeah, and put some rules in place. If you naming becomes very important. If you change the name of any of your measures or your analysis, if you're using this one datasets workspace methodology, renaming things is a nightmare. So you definitely need to plan ahead.
Yeah, so our datasets, we have only cut the generic measures in there. We only doing just the sums and keeping there, but the rest of the measures lives in the report. So that'll be another challenge if someone asks us to move a data or move a measure back into the data set. We haven't faced that, but we would certainly see that scenario in the future. But at the moment, the reports hold all the report measures, but in the data set, we only hold some of the base aggregation measures, which can be harvested down in the reports.
Awesome. Yeah, kind of separating what's needed by all versus those individual specific report measures and calculations. All right. So, yeah, Mommy, were you going to say something else?
No, all good. Thank you.
All right. So, with Workspaces, what I've done here is I've set up Workspace for today, and it's a mess. There's a lot of reports in here. There's a lot of content. I've pulled some of it through using the get data from files, from a local file, and just going and finding that Power BI report and pulling it through. When we do that, you'll see that we get a dashboard of the report as well. It's pretty ugly. It just says, here's a link to your report. So they're not particularly exciting. The report is where the content is. That's probably what we actually want to be looking at and seeing in the app or sharing with people, right? So if I close this report and close this dashboard, we'll come back to Power BI. You'll see that I don't really need to include these in the app. So I can turn that off, or in the case of this dashboard, it's so useless, I could actually just delete it, right? Get rid of it. This one is the same, so we'll delete that and get rid of that, all right? Some of these reports might be draft. They might not be totally ready to be published yet. So we might still be cleaning things up or publishing them. So if you're not ready to share that content with your end users, we can say, nope, I don't want to include that in the app. Thumbs up or show of hands, how many of you guys are using Power BI apps? Hopefully a few. How many of you are still asleep? Cool, seeing a few thumbs up. So Power BI has lots of different ways to share content with the wider organization. One of them is through Workspaces. And so with a Workspace, I can grant access. I could invite my friend Mickey Mouse and say, hey, Mickey, I want you to be a member of this Workspace. And that means that Mickey can see all of the content in here. He can edit it. He can collaborate with me. He can come into this report, for example, and we can use the commenting feature, if I can get that to come back for me. And I can add a comment, and I could even mention Mickey, and I could say, Mickey, can we declutter? Right, so we can be working in the cloud together on the visual reporting aspects of Power BI. Now, this is available, not, to be fair, not specifically to Microsoft Teams. I could be doing this in PowerBI.com, but because I'm doing it in Teams, I'll be getting the notifications through Teams. I'll also be getting the notifications through my Power BI notifications, which aren't showing up in my Teams version of Power BI, but they do show up in there and in your activity. So if Mickey comes back to me, and which he won't because he's not a real friend, unfortunately, and replies to my comment, I'll get a notification and we can work together in that stream. All right.
Hey, Alison, just to interrupt there, I saw you, because you commented like in Power BI, but there's also an option or a button to chat in Teams. There's a difference between the two, is there?
There is. Yeah, so commenting in Power BI attaches the conversation to that visual. So you can see now when I go back into that report, you can see that it's got a little comment icon on the top of it, indicating that there's some sort of conversation going on around that. And you should treat these comments like you do your Word review, your revisions. And so you can reply to these comments, you can delete these comments, you can resolve the comments, or you can bookmark them. So once they've been resolved, you can get rid of them and say, yeah, we've done that, we've fixed that, right? So the conversations can be specific and they're attached to the visualization. It also remembers, I should go to a slightly better report. It remembers what you're doing and where you are when you make that comment. So say I wanted to talk about the number 1 seeds in March Madness, and I come in here and I add a comment, and so I can say comment, because I'm not very good at typing and talking at the same time, right? So this is my comment. If I close that, you'll see that visual conversation icon attached to it. You'll also see if we click on the comments functionality for the entire report, I can say this is report comment, right? So this is a report comment. I was on this page when I made that comment. This is a visual comment. I was on this visual. I had that cross highlighting selected. So when you make comments using that comment functionality, it bookmarks the state of the report. And it truly is a bookmark. If any of you are using Power BI bookmarks, it's basically the same functionality, right? So it uses that Power BI bookmark functionality to bookmark what state the report was in when you had that comment, which is super helpful to be able to be talking about the same thing, the same data, the same slices and filters, etc. If we chat in Teams, what this is going to do is it is going to open up Teams, and it's going to say, okay, this is the report that you're talking about. Here's a link to it. Where do we want to have this conversation, right? So I've got in my teams, I've got an NZ Business Applications Summit team, and there's a sports channel in there. That's probably a good place to talk about our March Madness report. March Madness historical results are in. And then I share. All right. I'm hoping that that functionality will be improved because it is one of the least helpful collaborative features of Power BI and Teams. So all that has done essentially is posted a new conversation in that sports channel in that team with a link, and not even a very helpful or pretty or useful link at that, right? So basically what that chat in Teams functionality does is it copies the URL of the Power BI report and pastes it into a new conversation in Teams in the channel that you've chosen. So it opens Teams for you and helps you facilitate a conversation. All right. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you. That was very clear. Thanks.
Good. While we're on that subject, we'll just do that a slightly different way. And I might open this in a new tab to get this full link here. And so I'm opening the report itself in powerbi.com. And so we have the chat and Teams functionality that we've already talked about. But now if I just copy this link instead, and I go back into Teams and we'll go into the sports channel, we'll start a new conversation. Control-Shift-X, so Control-Shift-X, or this little A symbol will open up the memo, as I like to call it, in Teams. And so this enables me to give it a subject. And so I can say there's my March Madness results. I can paste that link. And you can see that that's already a lot tidier and a lot prettier. And it's creating an actual preview link for that report with options to open or even subscribe, which maybe not a lot of people have bothered to know that they can even subscribe to Power BI reports. So this is a lot more powerful and impactful than what we had before, which is just a bit of a mess. Takes a couple extra seconds. You have to actually copy the link and you have to go into Teams and find the channel you want to talk to. But I find that a lot more meaningful, and you get a lot better results with that than with the just generic chat and Teams functionality. So the links and the connections are getting there, but we just have to work a little bit to use them at the moment.
Yeah, you'd hope that they would go with the, eventually they're going to improve that chat and Teams button, and it would produce that the second channel, second chat rather than the first one.
Exactly. We'll get there, right? I know, like, the LinkedIn button that you see all over the place has come a long way, and like it does that, more of this second look and feel than the first one. So just need patience and maybe a little bit of pushing from us to say, yes, we want this, we use it, it's good.
Yeah. That's cool. Thanks for showing that.
Yeah. Any other questions or thoughts at this time? So Hailey, are you using that at the moment, or are you just loving, have you learned something new? I can see you've come off mute, but we still can't hear you. Have one. So using that, love that. Yeah. So there's a vote. Oh, yep. Have you figured out your mic?
Yeah, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So first of all, hello to you.
Hello.
Yeah, and I love it. I learned something new. All right. So I'm yet to start playing and working with Power BI on Teams, and this is actually what one of our large customers asked for. It's an enterprise grade BI solution that they already adopted Dynamics, M365 pretty well across the organization. And they were asking me, okay, so in our roadmap, we would like you to teach us and tell us how to use Power BI inside Teams, because we don't want people to go and open their browser and at just looking at a central place, which is Teams. And I was like, okay, so I have to learn this as well. So that was kind of really cool. Hey, look, I have a question around the perhaps permissions and access rights. While we have Power BI Workspaces managed by Power BI admins, right? So say I have a Workspace A within Power BI, and I have Workspace A within Teams, right? I have access into the Workspace in Power BI, and sorry, channel A, or Teams A, names are confusing, on Teams. How does that work? Is it managed by, I suppose it is managed by the Teams administrator or M365 admins. Yeah. Is that clear? My question is clear?
Your question is clear, and it's an excellent question, and it's changed, and a lot of people aren't aware that it's changed. So historically, when you created a team, you used to get a Power BI workspace, and because that used to happen and those workspaces are still around, a lot of people are under the false impression that that's still happening. And so they look at their Power BI and they see all of these workspaces that have the same name as the teams that they're a part of. And so they think, oh, you create a team, you get a workspace, they're the same people, same access, they work together. But I think it's been almost 18 months now that's not the case anymore, and we've got the new workspace experience in Power BI. And the way the new workspace experience works, it's not connected anymore to your team's workspaces and your team's teams. So you'll see that I've got an NZBAS workspace in Power BI. And in Teams, I've got NZ Business Applications Summit team. So those are two completely different teams and completely different groups. And they're managed in completely different areas. If I went into the admin center, you would see the workspace under my teams. You would see the NZ Business Applications team. And under Power BI, you would see the NZBAS workspace in Power BI. So that means that when we're working with Power BI and Teams, we have a little bit more flexibility in terms of who we give access to what, but it also means that we need to make sure that we're not frustrating our users by putting content in here that they don't have access to. So I have this NZ Business Applications, NZ Business Applications Summit team. And if I manage this team, and let's add Minnie Mouse, if I can find her. No, she doesn't want to be found. There she is. So I'm going to add Minnie Mouse to this team, right? But if you remember, the people who have access to the NZBAS workspace, Minnie is not part of this workspace at the moment. So Minnie doesn't have access to anything in here. So if I come into this team and I go into the sports and I add a new tab, and now this is the kind of second part of my demo of using Power BI and Teams, is how do we make it easier for others to find content using Microsoft Teams, and how can we use our Microsoft Teams architecture to make links and hyperlinks to some of our Power BI reporting. Exactly like Sohail was saying, we don't want them opening up a browser and navigating through all of this mess. We want to make it really clear and really easy for them to find what they need without ever having to leave Teams. So if they're interested in the sports and the reporting in sports, they can come to the sports channel and they can see all the reports that they want. We can add them across the top here. When I add Power BI as a tab in Teams, there's two options for how I can include a report as part of this tab. I can include it from the workspace, or I can include it from the app. What's the difference? So I'm going to go into the NZBAS team, right? So this is the NZ Business Applications Summit. Minnie is part of this. This is the NZBAS workspace. Minnie's not part of this, right? So I can add the March Madness historical report, and I will say I'm going to put Workspace, WS, in front of that, just so that we know that that's coming from the workspace. And when I save that and add this tab, I can see the content because I'm part of the NZBAS workspace. Mickey can see the content in PowerBI.com, but he's not part of this team. Minnie is part of the team, but not part of the workspace. So when Minnie clicks on this tab, she's going to see, sorry, you don't have access to that content. All right. So that's something you need to be really aware of, because if you're not careful, you're going to get a lot of really frustrated end users saying, well, this sucks. It's supposed to be made easier for me. I'm clicking these links. I'm getting all these error messages. It's not working, right? Yes, so he'll go ahead and tell me if I'm pronouncing your name wrong.
Yeah, I can see this can be a little bit frustrating for administrators in both sides. In large organizations, we have Power BI administrators which have absolutely nothing to do with Azure administration or M365 administration. Their access rights are pretty limited to only Power BI. So I think collaboration between the two roles will come up here. The importance of the collaboration between the two. Is that right? Or not too sure, but do we have Dynamics or M365 admins who are interested in being Power BI admins as well?
I don't know.
Yeah, I think it is sort of defining a broader role in terms of administration, security, management, governance as a whole.
And I recommend for Teams and Power BI the same thing that I recommend when I teach SharePoint, and that's as a general rule, stay away from this. Stay away from using individuals and use your Active Directory groups. So rather than adding Mickey, I could add the sales team, and I could say I want the entire sales team to have access as a member or a contributor or an admin to this workspace, right? Or I might add the BI team to the workspace, and then I might say I don't actually want the sales team or the sports team to be messing around with these reports. I just want them to see the final result, right? So that means they don't need any access to the workspace at all, right? I just need to create an app and publish that app and share that app with them. So the last layer of this publishing and sharing in Teams is to create an app and decide what content we want in this app. So this will be published reports. You can upload a logo, you can change the color, but the important thing we want to look at here is the navigation. So what you start with in the navigation is all of those reports that had that yellow tick next to them that said, yes, include an app, all right? You can still hide them at this point if you change your mind and say, nope, actually, I don't want to worry about COVID-19 right now. We're just going to focus on these reports here. You can create new sections. So I can create a section for sports stuff, and I can say I'm going to put the Olympic results and the March Madness into the sports section, and then we've got this report not in the sports section. I can create another section for quick links, and then I can add a new link. So I could add a link to our company website, our company SharePoint. Now, depending on the security settings of that web page, you've got a few different options for how you can display that content, right? So you can open it in a new tab or the current tab, or for some links, so this will be ACE training, if they have allowed embedding of their content inside another site, we can actually create a link and we can have that open in the content area. Okay. So I'll put that in quick links and we'll put that one in quick links. Now I'm using this group to move my content around, but you can use these arrows as well to reorder, and that will change what groups they fall into or what order they're in. Any questions on this navigation side of things before I? Okay. So now we'll go to permissions, and this is where I can put the entire sales team or the entire organization. This is where I would make sure that Minnie has access if she's hopefully part of the sales team or the sports team, because this is the sports report. We don't need sales. Right, so this is where you hopefully use those Active Directory groups. You're not using those individual people, and then you're giving that same access to the same people that are part of this team in Microsoft Teams. All right. Now, this is giving them access to the published reports. It's not giving them access to the workspace. So when I click Publish App, I'll publish this.
Hey, Alison, just while you're publishing there, can you, in terms of the groups that you can add into there, you talk about having Active Directory, security groups. Can you not put the team, like the Microsoft team group in there?
No, it has to be a security group. It can't be an Office 365 group.
Yeah. Okay. Cool.
Yeah. So you can't put the team in there, but you can put security groups. So with your admin center, whoever manages that, they've got these 4 different types of groups, and it needs to be one of the security groups, not the Microsoft 365 or the distribution list.
Cool. And do you know if there's any plans to do that? Because I think with Power Apps, you can share a Power App with a Microsoft 365 group, which is actually really handy when you've got a team and you embed the Power App in the team and you just share that with the team rather than having to have a separate group. So I
have not seen anything, but haven't looked for it recently. So yeah, good question. That's your homework, Hamish.
Yeah. I have to ask Microsoft about that one.
Any other questions at this stage? Okay, so we've published the app. So if I go to that app, you'll see this is that survey. It says report. Here's that section that I created on sports. And under that sports section, you'll see our 2 reports that we had in there. So we've got our Olympic results report, we've got our March Madness report that we've been looking at. All right, this is the one that I made the comment on, but because this is the published version, we don't have those comments, right? So this is the published side of things, not the workspace side of things. I can still add comments in the published side, but they're separate comments. It's almost a separate copy of the report than what you have in the workspace. All right. My quick links, the Olympics, I said to open inside the content area. And so that's what this result looks like. So you can see that we can navigate this just like any normal web page, but I'm still inside the app. We do have this little warning that the content is not provided by Microsoft, so be aware, but you haven't left your app. You've still got ease to go back to your report and find all that information that you want. This one we've said open in a new tab, so that's another option that just kind of gets you out of that Power BI app space. Okay. So now that I've published this app and shared the March Madness historical report with Minnie, if we come back to here, do we think Minnie has access to this Workspace March Madness historical report?
Workspace app.
Hamish says no.
I think
right.
because it's the workspace, right? Is that correct? And you've shared the app, but not the workspace.
Exactly. So 2 different versions of that March Madness report we've got going on now. All right. So we've got the workspace version and we've now got the app version. So now what I need to do is I need to add that Power BI tab. And remember we had those 2 options. We had workspace and apps. So I need to choose from apps. I need to come into here and choose this March Madness historical report. And I'm going to put app in front of it so that we know that that's the app version and save that. Okay. So Minnie has access to this one. She does not have access to this workspace one. Right. So that's an important distinction to make and really can be handy for those of us that don't have premium. It helps us to do the pre-production and production and publishing and keep them separate without having to kind of have lots of different workspaces and migrate and move content around, right? So say, for example, we want to go back into this March Madness report and we want to make some changes. So if I quickly go into my March Madness historical report and edit that report, and let's do something obvious, like make that neon pink, and then we'll save that. So I've made some changes to that report, and those changes are available in the workspace, but I have not updated the app, right? So I'm in that historical report. Mickey has access to that, so maybe I would come here and I would add a comment and I would say, you know, updated this color for your Google. Mickey can comment and say, yep, that looks great, and then we can publish it when we're ready, right? But right now, if we go to the Workspace March Madness report, it should be pink. There it is. And if we go to the app March Madness report, it should still be black. Right. They're both still pulling from the live data set. So if the data set gets updated, we refresh the data set, they're both going to show 8 out of 35 upsets or whatever the actual figures and the numbers are. But the changes that you make within the different reports themselves don't carry through to the app until you update and republish that app. Questions on that?
Yep. Is house mini access managed on the dataset? Build permission. Does she need that?
Yeah. So when we update the app or create the app, so what Mommy's asking about is the build permission, the dataset access that we've given to Mini. So one workspace, one app. Now that I've created an app for the NZBAS workspace, I can't create another one. I can only update the existing app. So say Mickey's approved that pink color, we're ready to publish that and push that to Mini. We're going to update the app. And in permissions, by default, these two tick boxes are both ticked, which means that Mini is able to use that data set to build her own reports. Does she need it? I don't know. That's one of those governance and considerations that you need to consider and implement some policies across the organization. How are we using apps? Who is Mickey? Who's consuming our content? What do we want them to be able to do with it? Right.
There's a by default read, which is allowed by app. Let's say you are using that 80 groups exactly. We are doing the same, but when 80 group is added to the app, does that 80 group automatically get added as a read permission into the data set?
It depends where the data set sits. So in this example, the data set is in the same workspace as the report, right? So if we go back to the NZBAS workspace, the March Madness historical report is in the NZBAS workspace. The March Madness historical report data set is in the NZBAS workspace. We talked at the beginning of this session how some of us are using a separate workspace to house our data sets, right? So if, for example, we did not have the March Madness historical report dataset in the NZBAS workspace, and we had that sitting instead in the datasets workspace, when we update the app and grant permissions to the report, it does not grant the read access to the dataset that Mini would need to be able to access that report. So that's a consideration, that if you are going to be using that method of data sets are kept separate, you need to give them access to the data set as well as granting them permissions here in the app itself. And Mommy, I know you're one of the ones that are using that data sets kept separate, so that's probably why you're asking that question.
Yeah, but I've also noticed by default that if you allow that group, I don't know, I could be wrong, but it definitely adds as in this whole 80 group goes there as in a read permission into the data set. Just we were configuring that last week, but I'll go and definitely check. But yeah, without that read permission, yeah, we know who are the builders, that they are on a different group, but without the read permission, even app doesn't show anything.
Yeah, so by default, if I untick this, they'll still have the read permission. And you just have to make sure that if it's in a different workspace, that you'll have to grant that read permission specifically. Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. And then if I update this app, everything, here's a little bit on your permissions. Everything will become pink, both versions, and Minnie will have access to the latest and greatest version now. And I think we're about at time. So any final thoughts or questions?
There is one question here, Alison, from Sun. Sun, do you want to take yourself off mute? I know you're not shy. You can ask your question. There he is.
Here you go, guys. Yeah, sorry. So in the Power Platform world, when I say Power Platform, PowerX, PowerSmart, and DataWiz world, there's a lot of concerns about, especially in large organizations like large banks and large government entities. They talk about defense in depth, the security concept, and I was just wondering how. And I see in Power BI we've shipped some network isolation capabilities as well. I was wondering how frequent does that get asked in your Works on engagement, and what sort of customers ask for that, and what sort of how easy to implement, and what is it commonly done? Does it make sense?
Yes. I don't get too many. Okay. Personally, too many questions around the security, and I tend to do what I'm about to do now and kind of push them off. My area of expertise is not security. I have done a few courses on security, and I like one of my instructors had a quote that I always think of, and he's like, data access and analysis and security, they don't really go very well together, and kind of butt heads. And so if you've got the same person in charge of managing both of those, you're probably not doing a very good job in either one of those roles. So I tend to be more on the side of the the access and the users and the managing of the data, not the security side of things. That's my colleague, and so we have discussions, and Christine does the security side of things, and she manages that. And I say, can I please have this access? And she says, absolutely not. That's not great for security. And I'm like, okay.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Because I think one of the early questions about the possibilities of merging even administration roles across different workloads, and at least in my experiences with dealing with customers, the data and analytics, they are a separate team from the ones that's doing Power Platform system dev type stuff, right? And then security and InfoSec, yet another team. Yes. So, but all they come up to the table is, here's my requirements.
Exactly, and we all have to work together. But yeah, if you've got the same person managing all of that, it's a very difficult position to be in, because we all have different competing agendas that we need to find a common ground that just still has that core security, but gives me all the access that I need. So
yeah, wonderful. Thank you.
Thanks. Anything else? Awesome. Well, thanks, guys.
Yeah, thank you, Alison. That was a great session, and I think it clearly shows why you're a trainer as a profession, right? That was like super clear and really easy to understand, and I definitely learned a lot from the session. And so yeah, it was great, especially just that linking in with teams and just understanding all those nuances. Like, people don't often teach those things. They'll teach you how to build the reports and how to put them into teams, but not kind of really what's going to catch you out. So that was really great. So thank you so much for your time. It's been awesome.
Good. Thank you, Hamish, for hosting and keeping it interactive, and for everyone that came off mute and turned on their videos. It was nice meeting you all.
Cool. Thank you. All right, so we're going to head to lunch now for an hour. I'm going to put a slide deck up, and it has the link through to the prize draw for the headphones. So make sure you've got yourself in that prize draw. There's been I guess a few jokes today around what happens if I enter the prize draw more than once. We have got I think Richard's going to do a dedupe of all the entries. So if you enter more than once, you'll it won't give you any advantage there. But I'll put that slide up now, and then we'll see you all back in an hour when we've got Reza, who's going to take us through Power Platform data flows for Power BI. So that'll be another interesting one. All right, we'll see you later.